do the things properly. Welcome, my friends and enemies. Glad you were here. We're going to be doing this probably. I think we lost somebody.
Maybe the EU has cut off his internet for the year.
I don't know if he's in the EU, though. That's the problem. I don't know where
they have extensive world reach.
Apparently.
Fungus.
His internet.
Drat you, Drat, get out of my house.
The
EU is like the Poriceps from The Last of Us. They reach underground. Eventually will get you.
I didn't. I owned The Last of Us Part 1, but I didn't. There he is. He's
returned. See if I could turn that AC unit off. Apparently, I cannot.
It's not that big of a deal. I can mute you from OBS if unnecessary, but it's fine. I just forgot to unmute everybody else from everything back. Been a little sloppy today. So, all right. So, big topic today was cancel culture, and what is it? Is it cancel culture the same as consequence culture? Etc. And we're trying to check out these different things. We'll try to burn through this pretty quick since I know we don't have Gadfly for all of eternity like we should. But hopefully we'll have a fun day anyway. So I found this article and Freedom Forum. I don't know who that is, but it seemed to have a lot of different definitions, and I was like, that's good coverage. So. There's no shortage of passionate opinions about cancel culture, depending on who you ask. Cancel culture is on the rise, or cancel culture isn't real. Canceling has little to no effect on the cancel, but canceling ruins lives. Cancel culture is a threat to free speech. Cancel culture is just speech holding others accountable. There is an agreement on what canceling actually means, and I kind of agree with that in terms of like what people believe it is, but I think there actually is like a definitive definition of what it is, and We'll have the definition by the dictionary. Cancel culture as defined by dictionary.com is quote unquote the popular practice of withdrawing support for canceling public figures and companies after they've done or said something considered objectionable or offensive, end quote. And it's a simple but extremely broad concept, but it's difficult to determine its limits. Now, Personally, I see cancel culture as something where you hear somebody say something that you don't like, and you contact their place of work, or you release their address for people to find where they live, or something like that, and you're trying to actually ruin their lives because they said something you didn't agree with. I find that to be more cancel culture. But when a company is found doing something that you personally disagree with, like they support things you don't want to support, etc., and you're like, well, I'm just not going to shop at your place anymore. People are like, oh, that's cancel culture. It's like, but is it though? Is that actually cancel culture to be non-supportive of something you don't agree with? You guys have thoughts on that?
Yeah, the basic premise behind it is about punishing somebody. And primarily an individual, right?
Are you saying cancel culture or consequence culture?
Cancel culture.
Okay.
Mentality. There's such a huge Venn diagram overlap between those two terminologies that they're effectively the same thing in my mind. But it's about punishing an individual. And it's about the active desire to see harm done to an individual with whom another individual or a collective group of people deem as being someone who has done or said something that they disagree with, and usually it's not an illegal thing that the person has done or said, right?
Most of the time.
Oh my God. I just figured out how to make one of those shadow people that you show in like haunted videos. Look over my shoulder. You can't even tell what that is. That's a pile of like floor mats, because the way the lighting is, it looks like a shadow hobbit or something behind me. I know how they do the haunted videos now.
The headless hobbit. So I would see cancel culture as more like doing your darndest to like go out of your way and make time of your day to just absolutely ruin someone's life, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's a vindictive punishment process.
Yeah,
It doesn't. It has no. There is no bearing on it in order to try to come to an understanding with the other person. There's no educating component to it. There's no reforming component to it. It's all malicious, vindictive punishment. It's the joy of seeing somebody you deem as the other side being hurt. That's all it really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people would see consequence culture that way, and I'm more of a proponent of consequence culture, which is like, hey, I found out this place I've been shopping at uses sweatshops and uses little children to make my shoes. I'm not going to buy from them anymore. Like the consequence of them using a sweatshop that employs children and me not liking that.
That's completely different, because that's
why I say consequence versus
that's a
cancel.
business. Well, when I normally hear people say something about consequence culture, it's like, oh, well, that person lost their job because people complained about what they said on Twitter. Well, that's consequence for speaking your mind, right? So that's where those two terminologies, like the way in which they're used, is overlap so much. What you are talking about is literally just consumer advocacies and consumer knowledge and decision.
I think what the problem is people intertwine their own ideas of the definitions, but I don't think they are the exact same thing. They have some overlapping things. Don't get me wrong, like not going to those places or not supporting those individuals. Sure, that's the overlap. But when it comes to actual like how you behave, because I can say I'm just like Target's going to put a whole bunch of LGBTQ stuff on their front area, and people don't like it. They stop going there. Target's like, wow, we're losing profits. No one's actively necessarily going after Target. But people are unhappy with Target. Target's losing profits and losing sales, and thus they either have to change what they're doing, or it's going to continue to go down the drain.
So, think of it this way: cancel culture and cancel are the same thing, right? So what the left does is they invent something like being woke and say, "Oh, this is a great thing. We just want to look for a little more diversity, whatever." And then when other people rightly point out that it's stupid and deride it, and it makes the bad thing it should be, then they come up with a new name for it, DEI, whatever you want to call it. Now there's a new name for DEI, so DEI is bad.
It was then DEI.
There's a new name floating around for that. I just don't know. I caught it twice already.
Bridge.
Talking about it.
I think
so here's what comes down to cancel culture, right? So years and years ago, all right, I'll keep this succinct. Back in the 40s and 50s, the communists realized that the economic paradigm they were using for communism to implement, because remember, despite the fact that communism uses socialism to get to the authoritarian state, they don't actually care about you improving your life. They just want to use it to get to the authoritarian state, right? They realized the economic argument was failing, right? So they came up with several different new angles of approach. Critical theory, the one most people know about, right? Another one is picking on cultural values to get so whereas they would use economics in the past to force compliance, and that wasn't working anymore. They wanted to come up with the idea of social penalties to make you compliant, right? So along comes canceling people for saying various racial words in public or whatever, which predates even social media. You know, when like comedians used to say all sorts of horrible things in their acts. You know, George Carlin, anyone, you know, and by the mid 80s, you can't really say that word anymore unless you're black, or that word unless you're Irish or whatever, you know. So that's just the first stages of cancel culture, right? So then social media comes along, and the Marxists are like, "Oh my God, this is like the best thing ever!" And there's a perfect episode of the Orville about that. If you've watched the Orville, you know the episode I'm talking about, where this entire society uses social media to run their whole society, including execute people. You know, so cancel culture comes as initially they're like, oh, we're just going to call out people's behavior in public, and it'll just they'll self-correct. And what really was happening is they would lose their jobs. Some of their family members would treat them like crap. Then eventually they got enough economic clout to basically start getting fired from their jobs, or people losing their bank accounts and stuff like that over just having political. Then they extended it to not just saying bad words, but disagreeing with those running the system. And so now we rightly pointed out that cancel culture, like woke, is BS. So they had to rename it, and that's where consequence culture came from.
I mean, I have not heard anybody talk about consequence culture as much as just it being kind of a reality.
That term, consequence culture, almost came out at the exact same time as the term cancel culture, right?
I've not heard it
when they started using it, but when they invented it, but they started using it instead of cancel culture for the political terms. I want to say about 4 years ago, all of the lefty political organizations and stuff started pushing it's just consequences your action in the public space.
But the problem is that consequences literally happen for everything. If you stop supporting something because a company does something, it's a consequence.
No, what happened?
What do you call it?
What the problem is, or what happened is, they want to use this hammer to force you to comply with their socialist beliefs. So whenever you call out a game for Yasuke being a samurai, like in Assassin's Creed, whatever.
Shadows.
Yeah. You're just hating. You just hate black people. So they tried, but because of Elon purchasing Twitter and Rumble being independent, they can no longer block you from stating your opinion anymore.
They don't have a monopoly.
Yeah. So, but they do still try to go after people's bank accounts. Like there were some dude about 2 years ago. He was complaining about a video game. He literally canceled his bank account. They literally cancel his bank account, and it happens all the time. And you always have to. I mean, structurally speaking, it's biological organisms respond to positive feedback and negative feedback, and the political extremists or anyone knows this is a form of negative feedback if you don't comply, and positive if you do, because you're part of the group and you're protected. As part of the group, where you can say and do anything if you're in the approved of left, like groom children or whatever. Because you're in the approved left, you don't get canceled no matter what you do, until you're not useful anymore.
Yeah. So with my sort of experience and understanding of the whole cancel culture thing, right? Like when it first became public knowledge that this was a behavior that was going on, people were, trying to defend the individuals who were being canceled, using the statement, it's like free speech is an American right, and
that's
so
part of this thing
right
here.
Then what the people who were actively aggressively trying to shut down people's lives were saying is, it's freedom of speech, but freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequences. And so that's where you get the connection between cancel culture and consequence culture, right?
I mean, I know I've heard the consequences argument, but I've never heard it called consequences culture.
That's where the whole connection originates, right?
If you dive into a lot of like political streams and all that sort of stuff, you hear it all the time,
So what do you call a situation in which something happens, you don't want to support something, you cease buying purchasing from them, you don't follow their page anymore, like you rescind your approval of them, in which it's not active aggression.
Okay, here's
just removal of blessing.
The left is trying to force cancel culture / consequence culture on people, meaning if the left says you should be canceled, they want corporations and government to ban you from stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So that's they're using it like a curmudgeon. Now, if they would just come out and say, well, because we think you have this political viewpoint, people should boycott you, and without forcing that on you and leaving the platforms to say whatever, like I can go on X and say, well, because I don't know, because Gadfly supports um, air conditioning in his hotel rooms, you should bar him from speaking in public. I could say that.
I agree.
And try to continue to do that. But as long as I can't force the hotel to eject you or force your job to fire you or whatever, or stop your ability to counter speech it, that's fair public speech. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the left doesn't want that. They want it where if they say it, you have to get fired, you have to get kicked out of your home, you have to get put in jail. In England, they put people in jail now for this. You know.
Well, I hear people like Metatron did a video, and one side he's like, I'm not a big fan of cancel culture, blah 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 blah, and then he goes right over and talks about this CEO apparently of I guess Scentbird or Sensi or whatever it's called, the little people that send you out stuff. But apparently she's like a new age person. She's practically going, Hitler didn't do anything wrong because all of our psyche in the new age thing, we all can learn from millions of people dying from murder and stuff. Like he's like, I do not support this. She's like, oh, you can heal your body in 7 days. He's like, my mom just died from cancer. You're telling me that she could have just lived in 7 days or have gotten rid of it in 7 days. And he took personal offense to that. And he used to have them be, I think, Scentbird or something like that. And they used to be one of his sponsors. He like actively just canceled it and everything. He's just like, I do not support these guys. I don't like this. But it's the same concept where he's like telling everybody these guys. No, he's telling people like these guys did bad thing. I don't support them. And then kind of like withdraws completely from them. And it's like you're calling somebody out, and that somebody is a company.
That's fair in a public free speech environment. What wouldn't be fair is if Metatron said, okay, since I don't support them, I'm making all these companies no longer do business with them. I'm making the government ban them from being a business. I'm firing all their employees. You know.
Yeah, but the government doesn't even get involved for it to be cancel culture. Disney fired Gina
No,
Carano.
you're confusing things. Okay, the left wants government involved. They want you to go to jail for saying this stuff. In England, it happened. Oh, look, Count Dankula went to jail because he made his dog mock Nazis. Okay,
but the problem is that England's not a real country.
England is the most, in terms of the U.S. legal system, England is the closest thing on the planet to us.
Mine is the freedom. Yes, that's the whole point.
Britain is the closest thing on the planet to us. Not England per se. You know, so. Now, luckily, we have a constitution that at least 2/3 of our country still want to be the supreme law of the land, not the left, but the other 2/3, you know. And so we're protected against the government coming, even though they still do it. Usually you can fight it off in other states and through political counter movements to stop them from, going too far with it before it's too late, like in England, you know.
So the one thing I will say is that I don't necessarily think it has to have the government involvement, but it's the pressure to force public. It's an active pressure to force public individuals and companies to disengage from a thing. So you can state your case that you don't support whatever and you don't agree with whatever, but if you then couple that with, and neither should you, and if you do, you are horrible and you shouldn't allow this person or that whatever to have any services or whatever, then those are two completely different things. Like I don't like Coca-Cola because their products are incredibly unhealthy and yada yada yada. But I'm not going to sit here and tell the two of you that, and you have to not deal with Coca-Cola at all ever. And if you do, you're bad people, and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you can still say that.
It's trying to enforce. It's trying to force social pressures. It's using social pressures to try and force a penal action against an entity, rather than you just making your statement of interest or disinterest.
Let's see, there's a fine point there, right? So it is totally ethically fine for you as far as you went was saying you were trying to convince people that we like drinking Coke.
It's
other people
convincing versus coercing.
Well, the coercing is what the Marxists want to do, where they want the people who have those positions in government who agree with you to then put me and him in jail for drinking Coca-Cola or whatever.
How dare you?
Or whatever. And
it better be Mexican Coca-Cola because non-Mexican nasty.
So that's kind of like you have to remember what these movements, wokeism, cult, whatever, that the left isn't there just to say they're not trying to just put pressure on people socially. That they're trying to get their people in the government to use that to force us to comply with their left communist Marxist way they want us to be.
Let me give you guys a scenario, and then I'll give you another scenario to kind of mirror it. And you tell me which is which, if they're the same, if they're different, if they're different categories entirely. So I'm going to use gaming because that's what I'm familiar with the most, probably. And so you have this development company who works for a publisher. Publisher wants to make money. Publishers enacting all types of DEI, ESG type of stuff. Sweet Baby Inc., Bridge, whatever you want to call it. And people who want to buy the game find out that this stuff is in the game, and they're upset. So they call the company and they say, "Hey, this person who's directing this particular department that's pushing this type of stuff in the game, we want you to fire them." Right? Would you consider that cancel culture?
No,
I would, because it's trying to it's a penalistic action as opposed to it's an active effort to punish somebody rather than just refusing.
The company doesn't have to fire them, though. That's why, to me,
they don't. But cancel culture doesn't you don't have to fire.
It doesn't have to be successful. It doesn't have to be successful for it to be.
In the left view of it, which is where it comes from, yes, you do.
I know, but cancel culture isn't exclusively a left thing. It's a behavior. No, it's not. They are the originators of trying to actively push. Yes, but it's not exclusive. Right wing could possibly do cancel culture just as much as left wing because the government's not required. Just putting so much pressure on a company where they make an action.
And when the right wing tried their version of it, which was like the moral majority crap back in the 80s, everyone ignored them.
It's happening right now. Ever since the attempt on Trump's life.
I was waiting for you to bring that example up.
I know. Hold on. I'm saying because of that, people who were on the left have completely swung the opposite direction because they didn't agree with something that was happening in that particular area. And now these other people are on the left are dropping like flies from their jobs and stuff because people are upset.
And they should be.
And that's fine. But my point is that the right is doing the exact same thing.
It is not the same thing. It is not the same thing. You know why? In the United States, for almost 200 years, it has been legally established that advocating for violence or calling for the murder of someone is a crime. You do not have the free speech right to advocate for violence or murder. It is not canceling someone to point out that these people wanted them to murder President Trump and they should be punished in real life.
Yes,
they can actually be arrested.
They should be
punished for that.
Yes, but they should be punished by the judicial system. Not by just people firing them because they dislike what they say or whatever. It's the same thing.
Why I personally, and you're calling for murder, that reflects badly on me as a company.
Yes, but here's the thing. There's always this thing called alleged facts. And whether somebody actually says it, whether somebody did say it, whatever the case may be.
The court are posting it on their own.
I know, but there's a lot of possibilities. A friend could have posted that on their account. Like
17 times in 2 weeks?
Dude, I've seen some freaking strange things on the internet. But my point is that there are things that are verifiably not true. That companies jump the gun, fire somebody, turns out the person didn't do anything, and that person
remedy for that. You know what the remedy is called? Lawsuits.
Yes, lawsuits cost money.
There are a million lawyers who represent on contingency for anything. I mean, I know I have a cousin who's a lawyer who would sue his own mother on a contingency.
That's the exact same argument that people used for individuals who were right wing who lost their job and whatever. It's like, oh well, if they felt it was unjust, then they can sue, and there's all sorts of things.
No, that is not the same argument. You cannot.
Yes, it's exactly the same argument.
You cannot legally walk out in public and say so and so should be murdered. It's against the law.
It's not about that. It's about the effect and the lack of judicial due process.
Judicial
due process is incredibly important for this type of thing.
It's the court of public opinion versus the court of the judicial system.
Again, that is for the government's control statement over things. As long as it's been established in the United States.
The First Amendment does not cover your call for violence, correct?
Therefore, you are not protected.
We totally agree. Yes. But that action, that behavior has to be taken to the court of law.
No, it doesn't.
No, for someone to be turned guilty of that crime. You don't just say,
I
think that. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
But not by me as a private citizen.
I know. That's my point.
As a private citizen, if you do that, I can fire you, and you cannot sue me for firing you because you advocated for murder.
Well,
they can. It goes to the court, and then the court will determine whether.
And it's been Supreme Court precedent has said that the judge will just throw it out of court. You advocated for a criminal violent act.
The judge should, but that doesn't mean they will. There's a lot of things the judge should.
In the United States, there's about 120 million lawsuits a year in the world. 110 million in the U.S. I guarantee you, in any given year, there's at least 500,000 lawsuits of people.
That's because the United States is a joke when it comes to lawsuits because they let you for anything, not for legitimate things.
Here's the question. Is wishing publicly that somebody would die the same as wishing publicly for and advocating for somebody to go kill them?
It's going to depend how they phrase it. Like most of these lunatics they've been calling out for have been saying things like
that then has to be determined in somehow, so it has to be determined in court of law.
No, for a legal consequence, yes, for the government.
Yes.
We're
talking about legal.
But the private business is not the government, okay?
I know.
As a private business, I can fire you for certain things, and I can't fire for certain other things, right? So, and there's all sorts of laws for that, right? One of the things I can fire you for is for advocating for violence. I can fire you for that. And it's been long since people have been fired for that, and they've lost lawsuits over it. You can find constitutional scholars for decades who've clearly expounded upon this issue. And this is, if I sound energetic about this, it's because there's a line has to be drawn in the sand.
Because you're a very political person.
As a famous Supreme Court justice says, going into a crowd theater and shouting fire, fire when there's none is not protected free speech. So if you go and do that, you can be fired for that without having to go to court to prove you did it.
I don't really particularly care about legal aspects of whether.
And yes, that has happened, by the way. There's a reason
I'm not saying it does.
People have done that before in the U.S.
But that's not my argument. My argument is that if Gina Carano says something and people call up Disney and say you fire her,
says what?
We're using the example of why Gina Carano was.
You have to say what she says. So if it's what she says,
she didn't say anything. There's nothing criminal about what she said at all. But they still got her fired. That would be considered cancel culture.
Yes, that was leftist cancel culture. That's what they want.
But no government input is purely on Disney. That was it. It just took Disney to decide, you know what? I don't like her politics. Out she goes. That's literally all it takes. By the way, I heard they're going to Discovery, so I'm looking forward to that. But that's the story.
And Gina Carano, her answer is coming through, where she's going to sue them for breach of contract and because of being fired under false person. I'm afraid.
Which again, I'm not looking at the whole lawsuit she's doing or whatever. But my point is that, but if that happens, where people are like, oh, this person said, I hope they don't miss Trump next time. That's not calling for violence. That's saying I have a wishy-washy opinion about this that I really wish. No. Saying, hey, you go kill somebody is a call for violence. Saying, I really wish somebody would do something about this person isn't the same thing. It can be interpreted as violence. Well, it's borderline. Dude, words. Think of Aes Sedai. Aes Sedai know how to twist words all freaking day. It's going to be the exact same thing for real people. But if somebody says something like
If
that,
enough
was it
people-
is it
okay.
Kyle
Gass
Gass from Tenacious D? Kyle Gass, is that his name?
Who?
Is Kyle Gass his name for Tenacious D? It's Jack Black's partner in Tenacious D. But either way, he's like, my birthday wish is I don't miss Trump time or something. Nothing in that directly states anything about violence. It's just saying don't miss him what?
Yes, he did. He did call for violence.
He didn't say anything about shooting. He didn't say anything about a weapon. He didn't say anything about an actual physical harm. All he said was don't miss. Well, you could.
What does that mean? Don't miss
it's
before I
completely open to
No,
interpretation.
it means don't miss when you shoot him.
Well, we know the subcontext. We know what he's trying to say, but what he actually said isn't the same thing as what he's trying to say.
He's not saying it in a vacuum, and because he's not saying it in a vacuum, he's not protected free speech.
Could he be saying it as a joke because he thinks it's funny? There could be a lot of things. We don't necessarily agree with it, obviously. But my point is that when that's said, and then Tenacious D basically gets canceled because everyone gets really upset about it.
You can't. That's Australia, okay? So
No.
Australia's
Australia's not the only one. People at the concert were like, "Whoa!" There were people who don't like Trump at that show that like that. It's not all of Australia.
Well, let's focus on.
I'm talking. Tenacious D is allegedly broken up. It's not just in Australia. Like we're never coming back to
Jack
Australia.
Black is not stupid.
Well, I mean,
He knows that
let's not go that far. But
Jack Black himself is a lefty. He's not stupid. He knows if he tries to do Tenacious D with Kyle Glass or whatever his name is, Kyle something or other,
Kyle Gass, something like that.
Literally 2/3 of his audience is not going to show up, okay, on average. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's private behavior, right? So he's making a business decision when Moron made an illegal statement and saying, I'm not associating with that. And
he was feeling pressure from his audience that he knows that he's ticked somebody off.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
What I'm saying is that's the difference, but it's also similar in terms of cancel culture versus just having a reaction. Like, I don't want to support Tenacious. Like if I was a fan, I don't listen to Tenacious D. But if I was a fan of Tenacious D, and I was like, I don't want to support you anymore because you said some pretty bad things. That's a withdrawal of support. But when you go to cancel culture, it's the aggressive pursuit of actions being taken against somebody, which is what Gadfly was saying. And that's
forcing, it's turning what the person does into a crime.
But no, there doesn't
but there's no crime involved.
But to the left, it is. To the Marxists, he committed a crime.
I can't just say I'm this political persuasion. This is a crime. That's not how crimes work.
To the left, it is. And in New York State, that's the way they have the laws running right now. California, it's like that. The left in this country is trying to turn us into communist China.
See, I think you're too focused on just the U.S. and the U.S. legal system and structure in this thing.
I am not. I'm not Mexican. I'm not a Mexican citizen. I'm not a Canadian citizen. I'm not a European citizen.
I know, but the premise of cancel culture is something that is outside. Like it's a global thing.
And also, with all due respect,
it has to deal with something more than just U.S. political structure. It's because it's outside of that. It's
like right now, Japan with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Are they cancel culturing Ubisoft? Because they're going balls deep on Ubisoft right now. The government's getting involved. They're like, we're going to look into their
not the U.S.
Yes, but it's the culture. Like Japan's a pretty tame culture, all considered. Like they're very honorable, respectful. They're like that. They're really chill people for the most part.
I'm not
going crazy
over something. What they can do. I don't do that.
Egypt being upset with Netflix because they made Patrick Black in a alleged historical docuseries. They're getting upset about stuff. Is that cancel culture, or is that just we're withdrawing our approval of? Because when you actively pursue somebody through a lawsuit, you're aggressively pursuing somebody. You're not just withdrawing your support. And that's the difference. Like, is what the right's doing because of the Trump stuff? Is that a withdrawal or is that a pursual? And if somebody is on the left is pursuing,
because it's illegal what these people are doing.
Well, it's presumed illegal, but it also depends on what they're saying, how they're saying it. The cautious people are saying it very ambiguous. But if they're not. If they're saying it blatantly, they're probably
people
FBI.
being fired are the ones saying please take another shot, or I wish the shot had been 2 centimeters to the left, and they're posting it over and over again. I mean, the people that are going after aren't someone who says, well, the world might be better if a certain orange man was dead. They're not going for those people. They can't. They can. There's a lot of. I mean, Libs of TikTok has been going crazy, posting what these morons have been saying, and it's always people saying something so absurd, like next time aim better. I mean, that's blatantly advocating for there to be a next time. That's not someone going.
There's nothing in the actual wording itself directly that calls for direct violence. That's the
that is
next time aim better.
So okay,
it's interpretive.
Here's a great example. King Henry III, who will rid me of this turbulent priest? 2 knights fresh back from the crusade. Aha! They go and they kill Becket. That was them interpreting his words to have a violent mean to it, but it wasn't explicitly his.
He never said, "Go kill this
desire
guy."
and request, kill this guy, right? He didn't say, "Go kill this guy." It was, who will rid me of this turbulent priest? And so
what
that's
was
what I
at
see.
the time? What is the objective external standard under which his comments came?
Who's
Henry II or whatever. Henry
III?
What objective external standard are his comments being judged by?
Objective external standards. He was pissed off with Thomas Becket obstructing his
that's personal
legal presence.
In the modern context, the objective external standard is the U.S. constitutional law. Okay, so you have to judge everything these people are saying when they say something like they should not have missed or whatever under the entire body of the last 200 something years of a U.S. constitutional law, which is an objectively readable thing.
What about this? I'm playing a game. I'm in a Call of Duty lobby. We're going to use Call of Duty lobbies because that's the best place to use it. If we're playing a game and you shoot me and kill me in the game, and I say, I will end you, am I calling for violence against you? Maybe.
Under the objective external standard.
Am I calling for violence against you in the game, or am I calling for violence against you in real life?
Under the objective external standard, no, because the context of you are playing a video game.
Yeah, the context could be somebody supports somebody else who did violence rather than themselves calling for violence,
which is illegal.
Supporting somebody who's doing
I have a lot of Italian relatives in jail because they illegally supported their relatives doing violence.
Well, to be fair, is that America or Italy?
That's here. Italy, they just shoot them.
I guess there's a lot of people who should be arrested over certain mostly peaceful protests, but they haven't been.
Well, they should be.
Yeah. It's court favoritism.
But that means that there's legal precedent.
Yeah. But then you have somebody being caught firebombing a building. You have the president.
Perfect example, right? So this evil son of a bitch, Jack White, right, and his team prosecuted hundreds of these January 6th protesters, most of whom did nothing violent at all. Nothing. Okay. At best, you get them for trespassing. At best, right? They picked an obscure law from 30-something years ago, disrupting the administrative blah blah blah, which meant that you physically prevented paperwork from going from one place to the other, and charged them all with, because they were protesting, they were obstructing the administration of government, and sent in some cases 10 or 15 years in jail. The Supreme Court came out and said, no, you can't do that. This law has no application to that, objectively, externally. All those convictions and prosecutions now have to be reviewed by lower court judges and be thrown out and have sentences reduced and all sorts of stuff.
Now keep in mind,
the leftist government got blocked by the Supreme Court.
Well, one could argue it's a very leftist Supreme Court, but that's a different story. But in terms of that same thing, somebody said there's legal precedent, and somebody else said no, there's not. Now you're saying
Jack White didn't. No, Jack White was trying to establish legal precedent. And by the way, for those who don't know, who don't follow this, he is the most overturned U.S. prosecutor in the last 30 years by all the courts.
Wouldn't surprise me. I don't.
He led the cabal of them trying to get this used as a standard, because then they could prosecute anyone. Like if you protest anything under that circumstance, that the left disapproves of, they can put you in jail for disrupting the government. Like, remember the Canadian truckers? Are you Canadian, by the way? I don't remember offhand.
Otis is.
Yeah. Did you follow the Canadian trucker thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they did to them up there, or are doing to them up there. The leftist government under Trudeau is basically saying that their protest was disrupting the government, and that's why they're prosecuting them and all sorts of stuff.
Well, they're commies. Of course they say that.
But see, in the U.S., the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 or 7-2 decision, I forget which, said no, this law cannot apply to that. And
so, couple things there. The main thrust of the legal action against the truckers is that it was violence perpetrated against the citizens of Ottawa. So the reason behind why they wanted to charge them is because they were protesting and hindering Trudeau and his policies. But the legal precedent from which they are trying to do it is because it was an act of violence and occupation and doing all sorts of other things to the citizens of Ottawa.
I don't recall them doing the actual.
So you know, there's an American trucker movement the same way down here, where they're boycotting New York and California. So that's one of the reasons it's getting more expensive in New Jersey, right? They want to use the same. They want to be using the same law that they're disrupting the government, saying these truckers are disrupting interstate commerce and all that. And that's what a big reason why the Supreme Court saying you can't use that law for this has blocked a whole bunch of their plans on who they can use this law against. Like, they wanted to get the precedent that they could get this small group of protesters because they think everyone hated them and they thought they fooled everyone.
The other important thing to mention with a lot of these things is that they are still in the process of going through the legal system.
Yeah, you guys have a longer legal process up there.
But even with the January 6th stuff, right? With it's still going through the legal process because of going through the appeals, right?
Well, yeah, just this one particular issue with the administrative law that's gotten the Supreme Court ruling, but there's others still pending if it's going to come out.
So that's the whole thing where it's the legal process, the whole engagement of due diligence and examining and dealing with all these things is an important part in establishing legitimate action against whatever group of people. So that's where the whole process comes from.
You mentioned the video game "I Want to Kill" in the video game. They've tried to prosecute people for that before, and
which is ridiculous.
In most cases,
ridiculous.
In most cases, the original trial court judge said no, this is clearly free speech or whatever. In some cases, they actually got convictions.
It's not even free speech. It's absurd. It's absolutely
dead
daylight. Literally, you go around and you have to kill people. That's literally your job.
You have to have an objectively reasonable external standard to say why they're throwing the case out. You know, they can't just say this is absurd and throwing it out. They have to have a legal reason.
If you're in a video game and somebody says I'm going to kill you, well, they could probably be killing you in the video game. Is the assumption. But if somebody's, you can't say that's literal. Like I'm going to go over there and screw your mom because 12-year-olds being 12-year-olds. But they're not going to literally come over there and screw your mom. Like it's literally absurdity.
It is absurd, but the judge can't just say it's absurd and throw it out. He has to have a.
There has to be a reasonable expectation and a reasonable ability for that person to go from point A to point B.
When a judge makes a ruling, he has to produce a huge document that says how my ruling what is based on precedent and law, how it applies. He can't just throw something out there and say, this is absurd.
Every judge should have to write an essay on every freaking ruling. I'm totally for that. But my point is that if there's no chance for a 10-year-old to go all the way across the country or even the globe to murder someone, then obviously it's absurd and should be thrown out of court immediately because it's not reasonable that it can be
usually because most judges can hit that ruling in their head. Wait, okay, free speech violation. I can put this one up in like 10 seconds.
It shouldn't even hit the free speech level. It should be like you're joking, right? You're really joking. Some 10-year-old on Call of Duty said, "I'm going to kill you," which is clearly in the context of lobby.
I'm with Matt on this one, and because they have to do this, and they have to set out that label because precedent is so important. If they establish a precedent of being able to throw out a case because the judge feels it is absurd, then that allows for a very loose capability of interpreting legal things. But I have to continue though, because you mentioned going from point A to point B, or place A to place B, and I have to go from place A, my chair, to place B, the bar downstairs, for the whiskey tasting, because I'm more than a little bit late for that now.
Well, thank you for joining us, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out.
We miss you. Nice to
need to come back more often. Yeah, we need to have you back every single Thursday.
Represent Canada.
Don't get
before they ban you from representing Canada. Represent Canada.
Well.
All right.
EU's creeping across the ocean, coming after you, like the Porceps. They're coming over the ground.
Like,
thanks for hanging out.
Like, am I getting birthed or something?
No, I described the EU like do you ever play The Last of Us or watch the show? That fungus, the Porceps, that it goes under the ground. That's how I describe the EU. Their reach is like a fungus, you know.
I thought you said forceps.
No, Porceps, whatever.
Cordyceps or something?
Yeah, just Cordyceps. Yeah. Just watch, even if you never played the game or don't watch the show, go to watch the clip on YouTube of the opening of the show where they give the theory behind this fungus that killed the world. It's an actual scientific thing. So it's like the theory, but it would never happen in reality. You know, so it's like a 5-minute clip. Yeah.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I agree with you. The judge can immediately think it's absurd, right? But he's also going to immediately think.
I'm not saying
it right legally.
I'm not saying he shouldn't write his essay. I'm not saying he shouldn't find points of contention. But he should immediately be like, "This is absurd. I'm going to throw this out, and I know where the legal things I go through, all the steps I jump through, and just put them out."
Most judges.
If anything, if somebody pulled a whip, and this is where the ability to sue anybody for any reason whatsoever is absurd itself, and needs to get thrown out in its entirety because it's not serious. If I was a judge and you came to me with that particular thing, I would literally charge you, and you would have to pay the court money for wasting my time because that's not a serious threat. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm saying I would do that every single time. I would set that precedent to the point where like you better bring a legitimate thing.
That long since been said. Nuisance lawsuits. Judges can punish people for bringing nuisance lawsuits.
Well, people still do it. So
I don't have a problem. I used to think like you that we should like. Then I'm like, wait a minute. If we did that, the left would exploit that to take our ability to stop them from fucking the system up. You know. So the United States works best.
I'm saying frivolous lawsuits. Like when the left says they said a bad word. Like, I don't care. This is going out of court and you owe me money. Like that's how a judge should behave. Now we know that judges can be activists. It's very easy for a judge to be an activist. It's not difficult. They have way too much power. They shouldn't be full for like lifetime servitude. They should be like a year of servitude.
If you did that, I guarantee you the left would exploit that.
They're going to exploit it anyway. They already have a lifetime person in court. Now, I'm for the idea that a judge has to put a legal precedent written down for everything and just be like, writing the essay should take longer than the actual court proceedings. It should be like you need to write me.
Oh, it usually does.
But I'm also of the mindset that we reset everything back to the 1776 era of what laws are, and then you need 100% unanimous vote to put it into place, and only a third to get it out of place. Because you want to be able to.
We would fail as a country if we did that.
Well, not necessarily.
Completely.
Because adding all these laws is what gives left so much power. Removing laws is what gives them power.
No, that's not what gives them. Letting the left participate in the system would give them so much power. See, the right and the center, as Strauger and McCon pointed out with classical liberalism, by acting tolerant to their viewpoint, it allowed them to infest the system. Okay, there should have been zero tolerance for Marxism like there was in the 50s. They took it a little too far with some of the stuff.
You can't stop a large city, which is almost every single large city, from having a bunch of leftists put their person in power and put that person in that city taking over
Because we let
the
them
state.
take over the schools. That was their plan.
It doesn't matter. They're going to raise their kids to be psychos anyway.
That is not where most leftists come from. They come from colleges where they indoctrinate these kids.
They come from bad parents. Yes, I am aware. But my point is that every time you enact law, it's making it harder for you to be an innocent citizen. Because every law that is put into place is going to cause problems for someone. You break so many laws every day, you don't even realize it.
People say that, but 99% of people have no problem.
But here's the thing: you break when you cross the street, you didn't do it the exact same way the law wanted you to do it. If you were driving down the street, you didn't drive the exact same way. They can get you for anything. And they can come up with any excuse to drain money from you and fill up their coffers.
And as long as you live where there are, or in places that Democrats don't control, that doesn't affect you.
Yes, but the problem is there are places that it does affect you. That's the problem. So what you do is
it's not because of the laws; it's because of the Marxists.
So put it this way: if you have the left and you have the right, and they're fighting all the time over adding new laws, I am all for it because I don't want any of those laws to pass because none of them are going to be good laws. They're not going to be just laws. They're opinion laws. They're this helps my party laws. They're help this, that, and the other.
See, I don't care about that. Saying I don't use the term leftist and Marxist interchangeably. I keep saying the one I mean. There are Marxists or non-Marxists.
Authoritarianism is just different sides of the same coin. I don't
know. It's not. It's totally different. They're totally different.
If I use everything lawfully, legally to come after you for anything whatsoever, it's authoritarian. Marxism is authoritarian. It doesn't matter if you're right or left. It doesn't matter if you're Marxist or anti-Marxist. They're still authoritarian when they're trying to encroach on everybody with more and more rules. More and more laws that don't have anything to do with
Marxism. Just happened to have picked the economic left, socialism, as its means to try to implement, but they've abandoned that and they moved on to critical theory, this wokeism stuff, this sort of cancel culture. Okay, because they realized the economic argument wasn't working.
But they don't have any actual governmental weight to do cancel culture. Cancel culture is purely social.
Not in New York and California and New Jersey.
Well, that's because they have activists.
That's because they have people that they've got
trying to make up stuff to get you caught.
They've gotten politicians in place in these states who put these leftist laws, Marxist laws into place.
And if they needed 100% unanimous to put that into power, and they couldn't, guess what? They couldn't do that. That's my point.
Then nothing. Then it would collapse, and we would be overrun by China in 2 weeks.
Why would it collapse? We have the base level of Constitution as protection. The Constitution is there.
You can't enforce the Constitution without 100% vote, according to you.
No, because the Constitution isn't there to affect on us. It's there to restrict the government. That's the literal purpose.
How would it restrict the government in your situation where 100% people have to vote for something?
No. 100% of representatives have to agree on it. That'd be all of Congress would have to completely agree.
So let's say President Biden decides,
not 51%.
Let's say President Biden decided to go and ban all guns and collect them and have the military do it, but only 95% of Congress voted to stop him. By definition, he's allowed to do it. On your definition.
Well, no, that's not a congressional. That's an executive. An executive would be different. You treat things differently based upon what they are.
No, you're missing the point. Okay, the ability to stop Biden from just going out and confiscating all the guns is Congress is the Constitution.
Built into the Constitution, so you don't need to worry about it.
No. That's because we have 3 branches of government that enforce the Constitution in different ways.
But you don't treat all 3 branches the same. I'm saying when you are legislating something. Which executive branch can't do, neither can the judicial, because they're not the legislative branch.
But the legislature can't do anything. They just legislate.
Legislation is doing something.
No, it's not. Legislation is not doing anything. Legislation sets a framework. The executive branch does stuff.
I know the executive branch does stuff, but I'm saying when you stop legislation, which is what legislative branch does, which is thinking, do we need these laws to put into this, do we need laws for that? If you had 100% protection from them being able to do anything because you need every single person, House and Senate, to pass something, most laws would not get passed, which is a good thing.
We would not have a country.
Why? Why do you think that?
We would be overrun because most laws, we need laws for the majority, 100% of people.
It's probably already covered by the Constitution. The Constitution covers quite a bit of stuff.
Does the Constitution say which guns soldiers have to carry?
Why does it need to? The soldiers use whatever's effective.
How would you determine that?
By shooting them and finding out which one's more effective. It's called trial and error.
How would you buy them?
Well, considering that a standing army was
Who
not
is the
part of
only
the
part of
original.
the government who can authorize spending? Who is the only part of the government who can do that?
Depends on which spending you're referring to.
All spending can only be authorized by the House of Representatives. All spending.
Okay, but again, if we don't have a standing army, because every citizen is the army, literally the way it was before. They didn't have
destroyed by China or Russia.
The colonists.
The war would end. There wouldn't even be a war. They would just use mustard gas or something and kill all of us.
Why would you think that?
Because they've done it in other countries where they don't have a robust military defending them.
Yes. But what I'm saying is literally. Okay. The colonists, when they're fighting England, did they have government-regulated muskets? Or did they have personal muskets?
And they were being overrun.
Well, technically they were being outmanned because they had an entire
They were being
nation
overrun by
versus
organized professional militaries. You don't know enough about the war to make those statements. Okay, they were being over. I
know plenty about it.
It was the government organizing trained soldiers, which George Washington, one of the big things he did was actually having trained soldiers. And not just trained local militias.
But he did not buy them guns with taxes. They brought their own stuff because they had to.
No, actually, the Continental Congress levied taxes and used that to supply the army. And most of the money
not the whole thing.
The organized army that actually won the war, yes.
Well, they had a lot of taking over the stuff.
If you take away the Continental Congress's military acts, expenditures, and acts, the U.S. loses the Revolutionary War easily.
It was also severely underpopulated compared to the British military.
That's not relevant. You avoid
the relevance is that we're not depopulated here, and we have a lot of people that are National Guard. It'd be like saying right now, if the National Guard went up against any other global military, the National Guard would not be able to do anything because they're just regular people instead of professionals or something. The National Guard was intended to be our military. That was how it was supposed to be.
No, that's not what the National Guard was. The National Guard was intended to be a supplement to the military.
When did the standing military become a permanent thing?
We're going back to the U.S. Constitution, not to the Articles of Confederation. Okay, so let's start there. The standing military came into existence with the Constitution. There was a previous standing military which was small, but the founders, when they wrote the Constitution, realized you had to have a larger standing military because the Articles of Confederation had a weaker one, and we were actually being preyed upon by Britain. Okay, Britain was taking advantage of the Articles of Confederation to exploit the states against one another. Right, and plus they had control of the oceans. So when the founders realized the articles weren't working because several of the southern colonies were willing to go back to England. Right,
you realize that the standing army Congress approved of was only 800 soldiers, right?
You mean the Continental Congress?
And 29th of September 1789, the army was authorized only 800 soldiers.
That was the first. Yes, that was the first standing army. Right, but that's
not going to stop nobody, not even a foreign military.
No, but within a couple of years, they had a large enough army that literally England was afraid of us. Britain was.
Well, we also had allies too to help it, but yeah.
There was no one rivaled Britain's power until we came along. No one.
But we did have help from France. We didn't do it ourselves.
Well, no, in the Revolution, yes, but see, the thing is, that was a particularly weak time for England. They had a moron for a degenerate moron, mentally degenerate moron for King George, right? They had a corrupt government, and they were literally at war with multiple countries around the world, right? And
Play stupid games with stupid prizes.
So we basically exploited, and France took advantage of a particularly weak time. Not that Britain was weak, but that there was so much going on that Britain couldn't concentrate on keeping.
They made a strategic play, and it paid off. Yes.
Yeah.
That was a good thing for both France and America at the time. But my point is that 800 soldiers is going to do nothing. Like if we had 800
beginning. That was
I know. But I'm saying is that as they expand that, they're expanding it. But if we had limited it to just the citizens are the military, and the citizens had their own means by which they could come across things, you'd still have firearm gun manufacturers. You'd still have all.
When the War of 1812 happened, Britain would have taken us back.
Not
easily.
At that time period, I don't know because the technology was pretty universally the same.
You can guess.
Britain
focused, they literally destroyed. The only thing opposing Britain at the time was basically France, right? And the Napoleonic Wars were.
They're always opposing each other.
Britain was raffle stomping France in the Napoleonic Wars, just crushing them.
Yeah. And then stretching themselves out too thin and can't.
No, the Britain didn't really stretch themselves out too thin at all. They became the predominant world power for the next probably 100 years.
Yeah. And we still didn't get taken over by them
because we had a larger standing.
We had a massive ocean between us. That's why.
Well, Britain had naval dominance across the Atlantic. There was no contesting that.
Yes, but naval dominance does not mean you can get supplies across it in speed. We can fly an airplane and carry a whole bunch of supplies across the world in a matter of hours.
It does
took months to get
there. Our number one means of transporting logistical supplies back then was by ship by sea. If we need supplies, well, trains is the way we do it now. Well, trains and boats.
Well, I know, but I'm saying like if we were trying to get supplies to Afghanistan, if we were still there or something, we could have that there really quick, probably.
Well, we can get a bunch of supplies there really quick, but the bulk of them still travel by boat.
Yeah, if you were taking like a mass map. Yeah, I'm saying like if we needed to get supplies somewhere, or we need to get manpower somewhere, we'd get there fast now because we have places all over the world.
You can get a shock force in there by plane, but the bulk of troops and supplies still travel by boat. They have special naval vessels designed to transport thousands of troops safely for that reason.
Yes, but we're talking about technology that could allow us to do something at the snap of the fingers. But my point is that they took months to get there. Like you could literally have the war be over before news even got back to England because they just lost. Like that's the thing is there's so much time happened because it's a pretty well documented thing that the ocean was a major factor.
Remember, Canada was part of England and Britain, I should say.
Well, it depends on which part of Canada, but yes.
No, most of Canada was part of Great Britain or the United Kingdom.
Well, there's French Canada and there's British Canada. They're both kind of.
By the time the War of 1812 happened, it was all British Canada.
The French.
There was French. There was Quebec, which was a French culture, but the French had withdrawn from the New World at that point. So what happened is. The small.
I don't know how we got here from cancel culture, though.
Well, because you have a contention, which I agree with on local matters. I think people should be armed. I have no problem with all that. But that will not protect us against a large organized nation state that can deliver weapons of mass destruction, as well as have satellite overhead. You need to have a government that could counter that.
And I'm not saying no government. I'm not an anarchist.
You're saying you want 100 Congress with 100% for everything. And if you did that, you'd never get that, which means you would never approve the budget for anything.
You're saying I'm saying you can't just willy-nilly be like, well, we're going to have a sales tax, we're going to have an income tax, we're going to have a death tax, we're going to have an inheritance tax, we're going to have this tax, we're going to have that tax.
How do you spend money?
I spend what money?
The money you pay taxes. You just said
you're not supposed to have all those taxes. That's the point. They weren't supposed to have them.
Well, they changed the Constitution.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Overwhelmingly changed the Constitution for the income tax.
Overwhelmingly the problem. Yes, that's my point.
And it
Just because the government changes the Constitution does not necessarily mean it's a good decision. No. The 51% changes the Constitution.
To pass a constitutional amendment requires a huge majority of people agreeing to it.
It requires 51% people to vote for a person that needs to be part of a two-thirds majority to do it.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
That's 49%. A lot of places that aren't getting saying something that's going to actually affect them directly, which is exactly how the left got so freaking strong.
No, but see what happened again. You need to have the ability of the government to have achievable supermajority.
Yes, I agree with achievable stuff. But the government has specific things in the Constitution it's supposed to do. If you left it there, you'd be fine.
No, it wouldn't be fine.
The world's not going to collapse because it has specific jobs it has to participate in. But then it stops those things when threats are gone. For example, if somebody like another world power came over and attacked us, they have to enlist everybody and say, this has to happen, otherwise we're going to cease to be a nation. So everybody get on board.
One person votes against it in your rule, in your setup.
But that's not something you vote on because it's not a permanent law. It's literally until those
yes, it is. It's always
no. Okay. So if let's say China attacks us for whatever reason. I mean, this could be communist China, pre-communist China, doesn't matter. It just a foreign nation attacks us. The Constitution grants them the power to pull an army out of the civilians because it's necessary for the country.
And to do that, they have to vote on that.
No.
Yes, they do.
No, because it's for them to go to war with somebody else. Sure. But for them being receiving end of war, if somebody shows up on your shores, there's not a vote. There's a we're kind of in a rush getting
you need to go read the whole article that involves Congress for that. The powers of Congress are something they have to vote to do.
But the power of Congress is to declare war. The power of Congress is not necessary in return for somebody's attacking you. If somebody's actively attacking you, wars upon you, whether you should or not.
Declaring wars are irrelevant. You're talking about the draft. To enable a draft, the Congress has to vote on it.
I don't think they called it a draft at that time. I'd have to check. But
we're talking about the wording in the Constitution to raise.
No. I'm not talking like Vietnam draft. I'm talking like legitimately like. If you do not come fight for us, we will cease to exist.
Every one of those things that Congress
they can put in a specific thing saying like we're going to activate a military tax thing or whatever to grant funds so we can repel the invaders. But at the end of that time period, when you have repelled the invaders, that tax thing goes away. It's gone. It's not staying around.
What if one person votes around your system? It doesn't happen.
But that's what I'm saying. They shouldn't be voting on that. That should be just it happens because it's necessary.
Every single thing Congress does has to be voted on.
Farting
in their powers.
Power farting.
Well,
I'm not saying the way they do it, especially now, is the way they should have been doing it in the past. And they definitely enacted things during World War II.
You're making a good point, but you're taking it to too extreme a position.
Because if you remember the whole tolerance thing you're talking about? The reason we're in this mess is because of tolerance. It applies to the government. The reason
I said the reason we're in this mess is because we tolerated the Marxists.
Because we tolerated government enough to let it get big. It got big, and that's not good for us.
Government will always get big, and if you add people, you're going to get
big. The Constitution should never have gotten big. That's the point.
Government's always going to be in scale to the economy generated by the people. It's just the nature of the.
I personally don't believe the government should have anything to do with the government directly. That's just me. But
now, if like they should have supermajorities.
Come on, cancel me.
For example, they should have supermajorities to raise taxes. That I think we both agree on that. So 75% of Congress have to vote to raise any taxes. Now, and that's
why not 100%?
Because you're always gonna have that one person who's going to disagree just because they're an asshole.
But they got voted in. That's the will of the people.
That's why you go 75%.
The 25% of the people are not being represented as what they want.
So
that's how democracy.
That's how reality works.
Not necessarily, but I mean, if
in reality, might makes right.
well, then why have a democracy at all? Why not be a monarchy?
We're not a democracy.
Oh, thank God for that. But people like to push that. That's the way the voting system is.
I don't care what they say.
I know.
We
I'm a
use-
Republican
we
Constitution.
use representative democracy to administer our constitutional republic.
Yes, I agree.
Because that's a manageable way to implement.
But if a constitutional republic is might makes right, then why have a constitutional?
But in reality, might makes right.
Yes. In reality, why have an inferior work of government? Why not just?
Because
why not go to a monarchy and call it good? One person
to quote typo negative, it's the least worst of.
Is though? You sure about that? Are you sure about that?
Yes. The United States government is the least worst of all our governmental options we could possibly have.
You're saying that one person having complete control over everything is
So you're
worse. No. I'm saying a monarchy might makes right. A monarchy, one person making the might makes right. That's the one might person over the entire country versus a horde of people who can come from anywhere or whatever and be as confusing as possible and are always constantly fighting over what might be better for the citizenry. And most of the time, it's not better for the citizenry. I might point that out. And they're being wishy-washy every year as opposed to an entire lifetime of one person who could do good.
And one person, King George III, destroyed the British Empire, destroyed it completely.
Yeah. Now you could do a constitutional monarchy where they are actively destroying
Britain was
the
a
country.
constitutional monarchy.
Well, clearly that worked, didn't it?
Britain has a constitution. It's just not something. It's just something they could vote on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like that's not too much of a constitutional monarchy at that point.
That's why the United States is different. We have supermajorities that protect the wording of the document.
Wording's a bit weird, but yeah.
You should look this up. We have 27 amendments in 200 and something years. I think they proposed like 3,000 or 4,000 of them. That's how many have failed.
And more should have failed.
The 27 that passed are pretty solid amendments. I mean, obviously one of them.
They're okay. Put it this way: if we were doing it your way, where it had to be 75%, it'd have to be
not for everything. For the government to raise taxes, there should be 75% on that. There should be a
my thing should be there should be a single issue, pun intended, and there should be a single page clarifying what they need to do for that, at least for the general option. Because I know obviously papers can only fit so much on them. But you should have like one page. Here's what we're voting on, and then maybe a 2 or a third page to back up the reasons behind it, or this, that, or the other. But also with expirations. So if you're going to enact a tax because you need legitimate stuff, then you have to have it gone. Otherwise, it stays permanent.
Most federal laws have expiration dates.
Not enough.
No, almost all of them do, and they just get
if they don't actually expire them, then it doesn't matter.
But that's the point. They use political pressure to keep them going.
Yes, because the thing is,
like Obamacare, for example,
income tax was supposed to last for like the World War II, and then it just stayed.
Well, no, that's because they passed a constitutional amendment that enabled it, right?
Yes,
and
now
they're
right.
Okay, so I'm trying to remember. Let me U.S. Constitution. Because I remember something a long time since I did constitutional study. A long Constitution. Let me grab the.
Most people in America don't know Constitution. There's that.
But we did in high school, and then I did some like reader groups on it.
Hillsdale College, I believe, does quite a bit of good stuff on that. Yeah. But my point was mostly going to be like legality versus cancel culture is not necessary. And I think
I agree with you in general. I just one very specific point though is anything that is actually a crime or illegal, you don't have free speech protection from the government.
Yes, but you don't need social pressure for that either. You just need the crime to be punished by the law. That's literally it. There's no social pressure. Cancel culture is not governmental culture. Governmental culture will be like you broke the law. You're going to deal with the consequences of breaking the law.
I understand what you're saying, but to me, cancel culture is a tool of the Marxists, and that's why I'm against it in general.
I mean social pressure is a good thing if it's used for righteous things.
Social pressure.
Social people trying to decide what
For
is
example,
the
let's
problem.
do a good example here. This what's the video game thing with the DEI company, the consulting
Sweet
company,
Baby Inc.
Yeah, Sweet Baby Inc. Right. So we engage in social pressure and said we're just not going to buy games people are on. Right.
Yeah.
We didn't say you had to prevent Sweet Baby Inc. from being a company. We didn't say they couldn't work on games other people could buy. We didn't even socially. Some people did try to push that social, but the majority of us didn't. Right. We just said we're just not going to buy it. Nothing wrong with that until
now what happens if you call the company that hired Sweet Baby Inc. and say I'm not buying your game because you hired these guys, and then they're like, you know what, we probably need to get rid of these. They're not going to, but hypothetically, they said, well, we'll have to get rid of the Sweet Baby Inc. guys.
And again, that's not cancel culture.
To some people, that's the point of this video was to say, what is the difference between cancel culture and just people saying, I'm not supporting you because I don't agree with you? There's two different one is aggressive.
See, this is where I guess we're disagreeing. Okay, cancel culture to me is a tool of the political left that they want. They're using it like the left thinks that they're the law. Let's go that way. Now, let me correct that.
I can't really disagree.
Let me be specific. The left currently wants to be the law, right? And we're not talking about normal, sane leftists like Jimmy Dore or whatever, or Tulsi Gabbard, people who want to be in a political process, want free speech and all that. We're talking about these crazy extremists that the Marxists have created. Remember that this group of the Antifa and all that, they were created by that core group of Marxists as their tool, basically, and they came up with cancel culture as a mean to say, let's first push it through schools and whatever, then we'll get our people voted into office, then they're enacted through law like they're doing in England, like they're doing in New York and California, like they're doing in Canada. Like they don't see it as just something you do on social media. That's just a step to them, right? That's why we have to push back. If they were just doing it through social media and saying, well, we don't have a black samurai, so we don't think anyone should buy that game, there's nothing wrong with that. But they're not stopping there.
I'm not talking about whether one's right or one's wrong. I'm talking about the differences between the two. So one.
Well, there's no difference between the two.
No, there is. There is. And Gadfly and I think agree on this. The difference is one is actively going after something. The other one is a withdrawal from something. Those are two different things. If the left just said, we're not going to support you anymore because you don't align with our beliefs, our ideal, our ideology, our ideals, whatever it might be, and they just backed off. They didn't actually dox people. They didn't chase after their jobs. They didn't try to get people fired. Then it wouldn't be cancel culture. That's the difference. One is aggressively. Like if I call up and say, hey, you're Matt's employer. I need you to fire this guy because he's this kind of a person.
You're redefining the left's terms.
I'm not redefining terms. I'm literally applying a principle to a type. They say this is cancel culture, and this is what they're doing in cancel culture. Then there's this other alleged culture, I call consequence culture. Maybe that's a poor word to use. But
they invented it. Consequence culture is another word for the same thing.
Yes, but consequence was not invented by the left. Consequence was invented by people who have logic.
No, consequence culture is a term they invented.
Maybe. But that's why I'm saying I've not heard that term particularly used.
I've heard it for years.
I'm using the term consequence culture because I understand that consequences are a thing that are neither good nor bad. It's what they are.
I'm guessing you don't watch a lot of political blogs and political streams and all that.
Not particularly. I'm not particularly fond of politics.
If you've been listening to Sargon and Jimmy Dore and
I've listened to Sargon. I've listened
to
podcast leaders.
If you listen to enough, you would have heard the term consequences culture since at least 2019.
Maybe I'm just not watching the right videos. I don't watch them.
You're not listening to them enough.
I don't listen to them religiously. I don't listen to them every day. I used to listen to a lot of Tim Pool. I used to listen to Destiny. Don't really listen to either of them anymore.
Well, fuck Destiny. I can't. He's Boogie 2988 2.0.
My point is that I don't listen to people when they start going insane. And Tim Pool's very wishy-washy, but he also doesn't particularly add a whole lot to the conversation, despite being
well, it's not him.
I'd say it's a positive effect on the culture war. But I think Sargon's doing a bit more positive because they're making people aware of things rather than pushing things.
Well, here's what I say.
But
I spend 2 hours a day at least trying to get a whole bunch of different things in. Well, some right stuff, some left stuff, some gentle stuff, just to give myself so I always know what's going on.
I don't particularly care whether it's right or left. I care if it makes logical sense. And most of the time,
my point is, I want contradictory opinions.
Yeah. I don't care what the opinions are. I want the opinions to be logically sound. That's what I want. But the opinions are never logically sound.
You have to have the contradiction to determine what's logical.
No. I could go to the left and give me a logical reason of why they do things.
That's not an adequate test.
Why is it not adequate?
Because it's not being tested.
What am I testing it against?
Something that it's incompatible with to see which one works.
Well, no. I could just take the left thing in a vacuum and just test it and see if it functions.
But you can only test it against something on the right.
No. I could test it against the environment.
The environment, everything works.
If the left is like, hey, communism works and we should do communism, I'm like, okay, well, let's see what scales historically have happened or this, that, or the other.
No, okay. Everything works if no one disagrees with it.
That's logically false.
Any political system or economic system works if no one disagrees. If everyone gets in and says, logically, we're all going to do it together, it always works.
Logically speaking, communism works only in a small community, and then it has to be a very tight-knit community.
Well, no, that's not communism. That's a different communism.
It's the blanket term for the communism.
No, you're not reading enough Marx to get the term.
Let me explain. No. This has nothing to do with that. This is what people want to apply versus what they actually ideologically believe. They want to apply. Everyone shares labor. Everyone shares the same garden. Gets all their food from the same places. One person does the shoes. One person does the blacksmith. One person does the horses. That's what they want. That can be done. It's called a settlement. But it's always in a tight-knit specific area. It cannot be done on a wide scale with a wide group of people who all differ on beliefs. That's where it doesn't logically work.
But see, I just said if everyone agrees to do it, it will work.
That's why it doesn't logically work in the overall. I don't need the right for that.
Everyone on the left agrees with it, so that's why you can't test it.
But not everybody on the left does agree with it.
Then they're not communists.
No. There are communists who want one form of communism, and another communist that wants another form of communism.
There's only one form of communism.
No, there's not.
You're conflating socialism with communism.
There's
only one form called Marxism. It's the only one that exists.
There's one intended form of communism, aka
by the guy who defined it, Karl Marx and Engels.
Yes, and that's not one that's been really enacted very well anywhere because somebody else uses that to take power and becomes a totally different beast other than what was intended to be. My point is that there are people who are under the communist umbrella or claim to be ideologically that do not agree on the same form of communism. The right does the same thing. They can't agree on the same form of freedom as everybody else. Everyone has their own shield and their own umbrella. They want to keep everybody out that doesn't agree with them, which is why communism doesn't work, because communism has to require everyone to agree. No one is ever going to get every single person on the planet to agree. It's literally impossible. There is no possibility of that happening.
Well, unless they kill enough people off, which is what communists do.
You would have to go down to a settlement. Yes, my point. It's never going to happen.
Well, you don't have to go down to a settlement. You just have to.
You have to.
You could intimidate everyone to disagree.
Anarchism can't work at larger settlements.
What do you think cancel culture is? They came up with this mechanism to intimidate people into agreeing with them.
But that doesn't mean people you intimidate are agreeing with you.
As long as they behave like they are, it doesn't matter what they think.
Until the bubble pops. And it goes wrong. That's historical thing that happens to people.
That's a whole different argument. Okay?
At some point, someone's going to put their foot down. They're going to gain a following, and then that following is going to.
And then the communists kill them off.
Communists won't be able to kill them off because ideology doesn't change that way.
China has one genocide every 15 years.
Yeah. And the rest of the world is very aware of it.
And isn't doing anything to stop them.
Do you have rights to stop them? It's a different country. They have their
own. We cannot trade with them. We cannot give them. We can do what Trump did and raise $1 trillion of tariffs and destroy.
That's going to wreck the economy because we have
their economy. Our economy was doing fine with it.
you do realize that like 90% of the things that we have in our economy come from
And
China, right?
when Trump raised tariffs on China, a lot of businesses came back here. The Trump economy for the two.
I know. I agree that businesses should be here. That's not the
They
issue.
did come here. They came back.
The issue is that there's not enough of them, and even then prices went up because it costs more.
Not under the first 2 years of Trump. The inflation started under Biden after about 7 months.
By the basic business principles. When you go from somebody who you pay $2 a day versus $14 an hour in a different country,
you don't understand economics. Okay?
No. I'm saying the cost of me to make one thing over here for 50 cents for a specific single item versus over here for $5. I can't make the same profit margin.
It's the same cost here no matter what.
Not necessarily.
It is. You see,
why would you ever do overseas?
This is made in China, right? I know for a fact this is made in China, right? It cost me like $5 or whatever. It's Christmas gift, right?
Okay.
I'm going to pay $5 for this no matter what. Because it's made in China, the corporations along the way and the Chinese government take a much bigger cut of it than the workers do here. Whereas if this is made in the U.S., it still costs $5, but most of it goes towards the worker.
That will also depend on where they're getting the resources from, where a majority of it's getting made. Because
again, if it's made here, the resources
there's assembling in America and there's being made in America.
Again, you're nitpicking to try to disagree when I'm right.
No, I'm a pedantic person. That's what I do. Technicalities are my shtick.
When Trump raised $1 trillion of tariffs on China and also threatened Mexican companies.
I'm not disagreeing or agreeing with Trump. That's not my point. My point is that I when the economy sucks and a small business is being oppressed by regulations the government places on them, the small businesses collapse because they can't keep up. This is a well-documented
collapse.
The what?
The legal small businesses collapse. What happens what always happens, a good chunk of it goes to the underground economy, organized crime, business running the home.
We're talking the guy who opens a hardware store down the end of the street.
I'm talking to practical.
You can't fight with Lowe's. It's not going to happen. Because Lowe's can buy bulk for much cheaper than what that guy can. Because he doesn't have the funds to do that. Because the government...
To be honest, America's a
better place. There is because it's not a free regulation market, a regulation-free market. It's a government regulated market, and the government regulated market.
Small hardware stores. I tell you, as people who are in construction,
I literally have like 4 houses down me.
Yeah,
I'd rather support it than a big one. They don't have everything.
My family has done construction since we came to this country. Okay, the majority of construction businesses never go to small hardware stores. Never. They go to lumber yards, which used to be the big box hardware stores before there were big box hardware stores. And the first big box hardware stores when lumber yards started selling to the open public, other than business.
Why do they go to the big places? Why do people shop at Walmart when I can go to a mom and pop shop and get the same thing?
Easier, faster access to the goods.
Why would they have faster access? It's you walk in a building, you pick up your stuff, you take it to checkout, you check out. That same amount of
logistics.
No. What is the difference is that Walmart has more they can buy at the same time. Same reason I can go to Amazon. I don't have to drive somewhere.
Faster access.
Yes. But here's the thing. If Walmart was the same size as the hardware store down the street, what would get you to go to one over the other? If they have the exact same inventory, and if they have the exact same size of a business.
You're missing historical reality. The hardware stores down the street were only for people like you. Businesses in the U.S. have never gone to those small mom and pop hardware stores. Never.
Yes. Yeah. Businesses find another business that specifically
what happened is lumber yards and plumbing supply stops, when we invented plumbing here, they were the first. That's where all businesses for construction would go to get their goods. But then, one of them realized, I don't remember who came first, said, wait a minute, if we also sell to the public, we can make even more money. And that's what hurt the mom and pop hardware store.
Well, not necessarily.
That's what killed it. Because it used to be against the law for like lumber yards and plumbing to sell to the public at all. You got to have a business license to go there.
Which I don't agree with. But yeah.
Well, it was a way of protecting mom and pop hardware stores.
But why couldn't the hardware stores just sell to businesses?
Because they're
the
too small.
businesses they're buying to. Well, that's the thing. Is that the places they're going to would be
When you run a construction
small,
business
so
and
they became
and
big.
you're planning jobs, you need to go and say, okay, in 6 months I need this set of supplies. In 6 months and 2 weeks I need that set of supplies. They have to line this stuff up for 10, 15, 20 jobs in advance for you and guarantee delivery at a timely rate. Mom and pop hardware stores are too small for that.
But that's what I'm saying though is that if you are a small mom and pop shop, you would focus on specific things. There are technically less businesses buying from a lumber yard than there are people who go to a hardware store to fix something in their house. There's more people that need that hardware store. But there are also two different categories. You don't have people going to businesses going to Walmart to buy from them when they can go to a blatant warehouse that just has a horde of stuff coming in from other places, and just
Walmart is basically a warehouse store. I mean,
they're their own thing entirely. They are the whole thing. They're the logistics kings of the world.
So mom and pop hardware got hurt when they allowed these business only businesses to start selling to non-businesses. Okay. And
that's not the only reason, but yes, that could be.
No, that's pretty much what killed them because why?
Yes, but I'm not talking just this one industry. I'm talking like all industries.
Just so you understand how restrictive it was. If I'm a contractor, I can't buy if I want to replace a door in my house, I can't buy that from the lumberyard because because it's not a business expenditure. So you have to go to the mom and pop to get the door for your house. And then you have to go to the lumberyard to get the materials for you. But that's how it worked in where the bulk of construction.
And again, I'm saying I don't necessarily agree with that.
Well, again, the point I'm making is this is the historical economics of it. And what happened is, I want to say I don't know, when did Home Depot and Lowe's start? In the 70s? Whenever they started?
Right? I wasn't alive probably.
No, it was probably before your time, but after my life. So let's say between 1970 and 1985, right? Sometime I remember the first Home Depot in the mid to late 80s, maybe. In any case, what happened is these private lumber yards and plumbing supply and electric supply shops and whatnot, basically they changed the laws in some states where they could start selling to the open public. And that became a sort of chain reaction because they started doing way more business, and then they consolidated into big businesses and became nationwide Home Depot. And that was a sort of cyclic effect of that took eventually, a more recent example, Uber and Lyft, right? Prior to, I want to say 2005, Uber and Lyft couldn't operate in New York, for example, the way they could in most other states, because New York was still protecting the taxi industry, even though Uber and Lyft were cheaper, right? So
and New York should not be protecting any particular industry.
Well, the reason they fell to the taxi industry was because these medallions costed like $150,000, and they always got kickbacks on the local political level when these medallions.
I get that, but that's government intervention in something they should not be intervening in.
Well, no, you do want regulation of actual taxis, right? Because those are because of accidents and things like that. You want them to have special insurance because cars that do public transportation, like taxis do, are much more likely have a much higher incidence of car accidents that cause harm to people.
Okay. What make a company that does
but because they drive more often.
Well, I know, but I'm saying if you're a taxi business, you just either branch off and make an insurance company that will deal with that kind of stuff, and then either charge the drivers for your company or whatever.
Laws that taxis had to have more robust physical frames, for example. That's why most taxis in the East Coast were old police cars, because they legally had to have more robust infrastructure. And now I'm not defending the practice completely. I think it was overregulated. Most of my family who are in the business think it was overregulated. But until recently, actually, there's still restrictions on Uber and Lyft that they try to make them competitive with the taxis. But they did destroy the medallion market, at least in New Jersey. I'm not sure about New York. I haven't followed it for years.
My point is that if I decide to grab my car and I decide I'm going to make myself available for someone to choose me to drive from point A to point B.
I choose you.
No. gotta catch them all. Nobody, not even the government, should be able to tell anybody else that they can or cannot use my services because they're my services. Now, my insurance should cover whatever I need, but I also agree insurance is a good thing. And
well, you'd have to get a different insurance because your auto insurance for your personal use is not a business use, which has a much higher risk. Because not because you're a worse driver, but because you drive more often as a business, you're going to have accidents more often.
Which maybe that happens, but again, that should be auto insurance is taking that effect, not anybody else.
Well, no, that's why you have your business insurance for a car is different than your personal insurance for a car.
I know, but what I'm saying is that it wouldn't be a governmental regulation. It would be the insurance company would come along and say, "Hey, you're driving over so many miles. This is per year. This is going to be what your thing is."
You want the government to be the independent, neutral arbitrator.
The government's never been either independent nor neutral. It's never been. It never has.
Well, it is in the
It
sense
never
that
will be.
it is neutral in the sense that
It may be hypothetically neutral,
no,
but
it's
it's not
neutral in the sense
literally.
that the laws are the same law for everyone, and when you have a dispute, you go to court over it, right? So you can't.
The court's totally unbiased. Yeah.
Well, again, that's a whole other issue. Like, I mean, objectively, the courts shouldn't be biased, but the reality is people are people, and in states where, like the states that the Marxists currently control, like New York, New Jersey, California, though less so in New Jersey, I have to admit, they put judges in place who do horrible things like what happened in New York with Trump, So,
I mean,
yeah. It's 7:30. I got to get ready for this podcast.
Hey now. This is the podcast.
Hey, it's the first post acolyte podcast of that show for the first time in 2 months.
I watched Mahler's final video. Where he had Ryan Cannell and Theo and Rags and Freon and everything. And oh my gosh, it was so much more entertaining than the actual thing because they were so mad. I was like, oh my gosh,
this wasn't the worst Star Wars show because it wasn't. Well, it was the worst, like, constructively. It wasn't the worst.
Objectively the worst.
No, in terms of offense, Kenobi was the worst, right? Because Kenobi is a core character of Star Wars. So what they did to Kenobi there,
so this is prior to Kenobi, so this affects everything that Kenobi did.
No, but this show was constructively, like, the writing was far worse and all that sort of stuff, but in terms of the damage to Star Wars, Kenobi was worse. That's the way I look at it.
I don't know. Blaming the Jedi for literally everything is kind of pretty damaging.
Well, but you can ignore the show in a larger scheme of things.
You can ignore Obi-Wan Kenobi.
You can ignore it all because Disney Star Wars isn't real Star Wars. But I'm saying, like in terms of
preach.
In terms of like when you do a critical, we talked about before. We're not talking about. We're doing a critical literary analysis of Star Wars, of Disney Star Wars, right? And you could say, well, which is the worst? Which had Kenobi far and away had the worst effect on the damage to Star Wars because of the core characters involved: Obi-Wan Kenobi, Princess Leia, Luke, Vader. Those are
Vader.
Those were your core. Even to the secondary, when they had the Inquisitors, the original Inquisitors were pretty neat. Like, they were basically the brainwashed Temple Guard and captured Padawans and younglings that the Emperor and Vader sort of brainwashed into being like their hound dogs, So that kind of made sense rather than because there are a lot more younglings than the 6 Anakin killed in the room. You know what I mean? So. So that made sense that's something that Palpatine and Vader would have done to say, okay, let's pervert the Jedi completely and make the Inquisitors.
I'm just imagining the clones dragging, pulling all the Padawans out into this big courtyard, and Vader just pushing his lightsaber through big swaths of the.
Well, I say this to everyone. People who rag on the prequel trilogy, I tell them the most poignant moment in all of Star Wars is in Revenge of the Sith. It's when Anakin goes to kill the younglings, and the first person who calls him a master in the whole Star Wars is the first little kid he kills.
Yeah.
And I'll say this much: Hayden
something's
Christensen
going to be a gut punch for him. He's like one kid that
it
recognized
is.
me.
Go back and look how Hayden Christensen did the facial expression when it happened. People don't catch that. Go back and watch that scene again with what I'm telling you in mind. Even though most of the prequel trilogy, most of Star Wars, even George Lucas Star Wars, was pretty wooden as far as the dialogue goes, right? The actors did their best at times to act pretty decently, And when the little kid does that, Christensen did a little. I want to say it's a little tick he does with his face. He goes like you see his face twitch slightly, like some part of him recognizes what just happened.
I think I've seen Revenge of the Sith once, and that was in theaters when I was a kid. Like I did not watch them like crazy amounts. I've watched the original trilogy a lot, but I did not watch
the thing that was established with Clone Wars and all, and the Lucas's EU was the older Jedi, the Knights and the Masters distrusted Anakin. The Padawans and the younglings idolized him. He could have walked into that temple and a youngling and Padawan said, "Follow me. Palpatine's the right guy. We're gonna kill all these other traitors," and they would have followed him. Like he was
the rule of two.
Yeah. Well, the rule of two is about them being Sith, but they're both supposed to have apprentices that push them, right? So like that's the whole thing with Dooku. Okay. What you're supposed to have, so Palpatine has one Sith apprentice, right? But he has to have others who push Vader, right? And then push him to always be better than Vader. So Vader he can't have a Sith apprentice, but he should have apprentices who are pushing him to try to surpass Palpatine. It's like an evolutionary type of thing, always pushing you to, be the top predator, or you get wiped out.
Well, let's just say that Vader cancel cultured the younglings.
Vader way cancel cultured them. He forced cancel cultured them.
He definitely cancel cultured them. And I guess we could say that the rebellion decided to remove their support.
Yeah.
So I mean, ultimately, I probably worded it horrible, so it's probably going to look stupid in regards to the overall thing, but it's consequences of basically people seeing something and saying, I refuse to support this withdrawing, versus those saying, I'm going to actively pursue you because you disagree with me. Which the left definitely does hand over fist more than the right, but the right still does do it.
And my final statement is you're making two things separate, that the left identifies the same thing, and they're the sources of those things.
Well, the left can identify whatever they want. They're wrong. That's not
how
that works.
It doesn't matter whether they're wrong. You see, you can't win by taking your enemy's concepts and cleaning them up. You have to establish your own concepts.
I'm not taking their concepts and cleaning them up. I'm taking the concepts and cleaning them up.
But they invented the concept.
No. Evil never creates. They only corrupt. Remember that? They took the thing and then twisted it and made it something else. They took the consequence principle and then turned it into the cancel culture. They took something that wasn't theirs to begin with, took it, twisted it, and then made it theirs. That's the difference between the two. If all they did was just withdraw their support, they could still make an impact. But it wouldn't give them as much blowback. But they still make it. They just took consequences and made it their own, which is not how it works.
So I agree with what you're saying, but the words you're using for them are wrong.
You're incorrect. Possibly incorrect.
The cancel and cancel culture concepts, right? The cancel culture was the preferred term until we made it look stupid. Now they're calling it consequence culture. But they had,
that's why I admit I could be using the wrong word. Consequences as an idea, like what a consequence is.
When you're correct,
one equals consequences.
That's
what I'm using the term of consequences. If I have to shed the consequences culture, I'm completely fine shedding that, because it's not a thing that I'm going to like.
You're correct with the word consequences means, right? But they're taking they made this consequence culture thing.
How about this? Canceling versus consequences. Let's do that. So canceling,
how about
somebody and consequences.
How about we push back against the friggin' Marxists and stop them from freaking our country up?
I mean, sure, but you do that by withdrawing support, letting things collapse, and then things change. That's literally what's going on in the gaming industry right now. Like so many Sweet Baby Inc., DEI, whatever you want to call it. They're literally closing video game developer studios faster than they're making games.
But when they also when they commit crimes like grooming children and burning cities down, you put them in jail.
I would agree with that. But whether until somebody actually does it, it doesn't matter.
Like, do you ever notice?
You could say, "Hey, I don't agree with this."
There's a famous video, right? A famous video. If anyone wants to find it, not to drag this out, but it's a good point. Antifa never does their riot in states where people won't tolerate it. So there was an Antifa, the first and only Antifa riot in Texas outside of Austin, was in some sort of Texas town, and the people took out like bats and stuff and started beating the crap out of them. And the cops were like, well, y'all attacked them first. You instigated it. And they arrested the Antifa guys.
But here's the thing. Depending on where it's at, like in Oregon, the police would be on the side of Antifa.
Exactly, because the communists...
But here's the thing. If you went to places like where, what's the kid's name? Wisconsin.
Rittenhouse?
Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah. If that place had said you're able to protest, but as soon as you throw a brick, as soon as you throw a Molotov cocktail or a firebomb, as soon as you commit damage, you're open season, buddy. Yeah. You would see that group of people literally dispel into the ether because they know the second they can do something, it's game over.
That was the interesting thing there, right? So that's a battleground where the left is trying to take over an area, like that prosecutor. They were leftists, but the people were still not gone. So when they brought all those false charges and their own video evidence proved Rittenhouse was innocent, the jury was like, he's innocent, right? So,
but that's the thing is that it shouldn't have been a Rittenhouse specific thing. It should have been they're literally hunting down a kid who has a weapon, but he's trying to leave. They're approaching him. He's not advancing on them. Basic concept is assault is aggression. Defense is removing.
Well,
he's removing himself. He's not attacking.
Brought this one up, but even leaving the trial aside, Kyle and a bunch of white guys were defending non-white people from other white people trying to destroy their business.
Yeah. And again, the rooftop Korean thing should be a thing everywhere. Every business should have that. Every residential house should have that.
This is what, when you bring it up to the left, they can't counter this argument. When you say Kyle and his white friends were there defending a brown person from other white people.
He was allegedly he was carrying around a med kit and he was trying to help people.
He provably.
I'm saying like whether or not he's wearing it and actively trying to, or versus wearing it just because I'm going to use this.
Well, he did. This video.
What I'm saying is that's an irrelevant point. The point is that he had the. It's like if you go into a war, you don't shoot the medics. You don't do that because your side is going to get their medic shot.
Well, it's like, but you know.
Well, again, you should open fire defense.
Okay, I got 20 minutes and I got to do stuff. So let's.
Sure. All right. Well, let me do my usual thing. But anyway, guys that went all over the place. That was not expected. It's not planned.
Missed. We're gone.
You could thank Matt for the political commentary because that was not intended by myself or Gadfly, I don't think. But yeah. So I'm glad Gadfly came back for a little bit. He was actually here for a long time. We were talking about the breeze beforehand. I was like, now for the actual topic. He's like, I'm going to leave 10 minutes. We stayed around for 30 minutes. Thank you, Gadfly. We love you to death. We want you to come back more often. But yeah, we'll just. Excuse me. Woo. Yeah. We'll probably figure out a whole bunch of other things, and maybe this topic will come up again another type of recording or something. But hopefully it didn't bore you to death. I mean, I can bore myself to death, so it's not that difficult. But I don't know. We'll see what we come out. We got a couple weeks until we can resume our Tolkien streams due to the fact that Sage is on vacation or holiday, as they call it in the Europes. That's also assuming he's not in a gulag in Europe at that point. But yeah, we should hopefully be back with that in probably 3 weeks. And if we can get lucky and get Gadfly or Arturian back in business, that'd be fantastic. But I don't think we get Arturian until, is it September? I don't remember. But whenever we get him back, we can get the council light back together and cover some more topics. So if anybody has any recommendations on things they want covered, just pop a comment. If you enjoy the discourse, the disagreements, the agreements, the whatever it might be, pop us a like if you like the video content and whatnot. The liking and commenting helps the algorithm. Subscribe if you enjoy the content. All that good stuff. I'm really bad about doing this because I should be doing this at the beginning and I never do. But you guys get the idea. Your support means the world to us, and we really wouldn't be doing this without you guys. So we'll call it there. No idea what's coming up next, but we'll find something because I'm sure something within the next week will happen. So thanks everybody, and remember my friends, walk in the light.